Today we're talking about using piping and ombre colours to finish your cakes beautifully. I'm going to be using an apple and pineapple cake and a fluffy cream cheese icing. Hi, I'm Taryn. Welcome! By the end of this video, I'm hoping you'll have confidence to take your cake finishing skills to the next level. I'm using a spiced apple and pineapple cake, but these tips apply to any cake flavours. I'll quickly show you how to make this delicious cake, and then we'll get into the main purpose of this video, which is to show you some tips and tricks for finishing cakes by adding colour and using piping techniques. Today we're going to be using a star tip. Well, this cake isn't going to bake itself, so let's get it into the oven. These are the things we need: eggs, oil, sugar. This is some grated green apple that I've squeezed the excess liquid out of, so it's quite dry. This helps to not add extra liquid to the cake. I've got some crushed pineapple, and again I've strained this through a sieve to get it quite dry, not wanting to add the extra liquid. Some flour, baking soda, baking powder, cinnamon and mixed spice. Crack your eggs into a big mixing bowl. Add the sugar and oil and whisk until it's all blended. If you can see the oil, you haven't quite whisked it for long enough. Then mix in the apple and the pineapple. It will take a bit of mixing to get the apple and pineapple completely through the batter. And lastly, add the flour, mixed spice, cinnamon, baking soda and baking powder. Mix it gently until it's just combined. If you overmix it, you'll end up with a dense cake rather than a light and fluffy one. I've lined my tin with baking paper, slightly higher than the tin edge. This is so the cake will rise cleanly above the top. Pour the batter into the tin, pushing it into the corners. Pop it into the oven at about 180 degrees Celsius for approximately 1 hour. Look at our beautifully risen cake. It smells so good. Now we can leave it to cool while we prepare the cream cheese icing. These are the ingredients we need: cream cheese, butter, icing sugar and vanilla essence. Start by creaming the butter until it's pale and fluffy. The addition of butter to our cream cheese icing makes it firmer and easier to pipe. If you use only cream cheese, it's a lot softer and doesn't hold its shape when piped. Then we'll add the cream cheese. Make sure the butter and cream cheese are the same temperature, otherwise your icing will split. Now we can add the vanilla essence and the icing sugar. Give it another good mix around, starting slowly and increasing the speed so the icing sugar doesn't all end up outside the mixing bowl. There, what a beautiful fluffy finished icing. Let's get icing our cake. First we need to cut off the top here to make sure it's level. Then we'll cut it in half so we can add some yummy icing in the centre. You can use your best judgment here, or use a measuring tape and mark halfway around the cake and then join up the markings and cut through. Put a big blob of icing in the centre, and using a small palette knife spread the icing out to the edges. Try to keep the palette knife in contact with the icing and avoid touching the cake with the palette knife. This will stop your icing picking up little crumbs of cake and mixing it into your icing. Now we can put on the top of the cake. Give it a little push down to stick it together and keep it all level. Have you ever heard of a crumb coat on a cake? A crumb coat seals the edge of the cake and stops crumbs getting picked up into your outer layer of icing. We'll put some icing around the sides scraping the excess into a separate bowl so that any crumbs in there don't end up in our main bowl of icing. Work your way right around the cake and on the top. Put the cake into the fridge or freezer for a few minutes if you're in a hurry to let the icing set. To create our ombre colouring, I've divided the icing into 3 separate bowls. This one's got about a 3/4 cup, this one a 1/2 cup, and this one a 1/4 cup. If I was to add a little bit of colouring to each of these, it's very hard to get the colour evenly fading between them. So I like to colour the biggest amount of icing to the darkest shade of my colour. Then I take a little bit of this one and put it into here and mix that together, and that'll give me a lighter shade of what I've started with. And I take a little bit of this one and mix it into the last amount, and I'll get another lighter shade of my original colour. So here you can see our darkest shade, medium shade, and the lightest shade. I've put my icing into 3 separate piping bags, all with the same star nozzle. Let's get this onto the cake. Here's our chilled crumb-coated cake. It's best to put your cake onto your cake plate now so that you don't ruin your icing details if you move it later. Let's start with a basic star to cover the entire side of the cake. I'm doing 2 rows in each shade of green to give it a more interesting look. Keep the pressure even to keep the stars the same size. On this side, we'll do the classic rosette. Start with the darkest shade of colour and pipe a row of rosettes, trying to keep them uniform. Then switch to a lighter shade for each subsequent row. If you have any little gaps, that's not a problem. You can just pipe a small star in the gap and the colour closest to the piping around it. On this side, we'll pipe wiggled horizontal lines. Again, I'll alternate the shades of colour to add another dimension. We're using ombre colours, but this looks great in any colour scheme to match your occasion. Rainbow colours also look stunning. For our last side, we'll do little vertical snails. Just like before, I'll go up in the different shades. You can do these same techniques using different icing tips to create very different looks. Each one is unique and stunning in its own way. Let me know in the comments if you have a favourite tip. All the sides of our cake are done, so I'm just going to fill in the top using the different styles. Normally you would only do one of these styles on a cake. I'm just giving you some ideas of what's possible. So here's our 4 different ideas. We've got our stars, our rosettes, our wiggly horizontal lines, and our little snails. We've discussed levelling cakes, the benefits of doing a crumb coat, and using a star tip to create texture on your cake. These are just some ideas to give your cakes a professional touch. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more great tips and inspiration to take your food presentation to the next level. Happy cake finishing! If you like this video, I've got another one lined up for you here and a playlist down here. See you next time!